Hello, thank you for joining us today for today's webinar, Work It, Secrets to Career Success in the New Year, brought to you by Bankable. Before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over. If you have any technical difficulties during today's webcast, please click on the question mark in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And we have a lot to cover today, so if you'd like a copy of the slides, they are downloadable from the resources list on the right-hand side of your screen. Bankable by Forbes is your guide to getting ahead. We offer fresh perspectives on money, career, and balance to get you where you want to be. Follow us on Twitter at Forbes Bankable and join in the conversation today using hashtag AskBankable. My name is Kim Horner, and I'm a social media editor here at Forbes, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to our guest presenter, Carrie Kerpen. She's the co-founder and CEO of Likeable Media, a global content studio that was named Crain's sixth best place to work in New York City. She is the host of the hit podcast, All the Social Ladies, and a columnist for Forbes. Carrie has been featured by the New York Times, CBS Early Show, ABC World News Tonight, Fox News, and CNBC's On the Money. She has keynoted conferences in London, Las Vegas, Mexico City, New York, among others. Her new book is Work It, Secrets for Success from the Boldest Women in Business, and that's the presentation that you'll be seeing today. Thank you so much for joining us, Carrie.
Thank you so much, Kim. I'm so excited to be here for Forbes. You know, I love Forbes, and writing for them has been a great privilege to be able to communicate important tips to women. And so I'm just so thankful to be here. Thank you so much.
We're so excited to have you.
Good. Me too. It's a love fest. Okay, you guys, so we're going to get started. And we've got a lot of information. One of the things that I love about Forbes and about Kim is that when we were putting this together, she really wanted to make sure that you got as many tips as possible in one webinar. And so the way that we're going to do that is I'm going to tell you a bunch of stories from the first section of my book. And I'm going to tell you stories from each chapter of the first section and tie them into lessons that you can use. So I'm looking forward to you finishing up this very exciting webinar and having a bunch of takeaways. And just as a reminder, you will have these slides. There's lots of tips on them, but you will be able to have these slides after the webinar. So just digest and enjoy and take the ride with me. So there are three sections in Work It. And really that was because I feel like when we talk to women, we tend to always talk about one area, right? So there's working it professionally, how to get ahead. But then there's also working it passionately, about learning how to make the right decisions. And then the third piece that we talk about is working it practically, which is like, oh my goodness, I'm trying to do this all and have a family, and what happens if something difficult happens in my life, and all of that kind of stuff. So each section is chock full of information, but the section that we're focusing on today that I'm really excited about for you is about how to work it professionally, which is a really important section because it gives us a lot of the tips from these different women that really help propel them forward in their careers. And I think that's a really important piece of the puzzle. So today we'll be listening to a bunch of those different stories, including some of my own. And I'm really looking forward to that. We're going to cover all the basics of career planning and getting a bunch of secrets that you need to know to get hired, grow your career, ask for raises, and more. One of the big secrets that I just want to open with for you is that there is no one secret. That's why I interviewed so many different women. What I found was that many women got to the top doing lots of different things. And so the idea is you don't have to agree with every single woman in the book or every single tip featured here today. You have to look for the people who are most like you and inspire you, and then you have to run with those types of tips. So here we go. So the first section is called Your Network is Your Net Worth. And I'm going to start with my own story for this. My husband, who I co-founded my company with back in 2007, is very outgoing and definitely an extrovert. He's unafraid to network at any party we go to. He will talk to anyone, anywhere, and talk about his business all day and night. I, however, felt very differently than he did, very differently, and always networked a little bit differently. I always felt a lot of caution. And one of the things that he always did was he always met people on planes. It was like his favorite thing. And one of the things that I always did was hide from people on planes because I always felt like, oh, nobody wants to talk to me on a plane. Why am I going to talk to anyone? Nobody wants to be bothered. And to some extent, that's really true. But I came to a real realization when I took a plane ride just to Boston from New York, a shuttle, and I was waiting in the waiting area, and across from me was sitting Meredith Vieira. At the time, I believe she was on The View. She's a very, very popular journalist and advocate for women everywhere. And I had a major celebrity girl crush on Meredith Vieira, not just because she was fabulous, but because her husband struggled with multiple sclerosis. I have a lot of multiple sclerosis in my family. I thought she was an amazing caregiver to her husband. I just totally admired her. But I was terrified to go up to her. So finally, what I realized was that I needed to network with her, but I needed to network in my own way. I didn't need to do it the way Dave would do it, and I didn't need to do it the way somebody else might do it. I need to figure out what would resonate best with me, what felt truest to me. And so I boarded the plane. Meredith was in first class, and I was in coach, obviously, and I decided that I was going to pass her a note. So I asked the flight attendant, I said, Meredith Vieira is sitting up there in 2A or whatever. Can you send her this note? I wrote her a little note saying, I don't mean to bother you or disturb your trip. I just want to tell you, I'm in awe of you, how you take care of your husband. My mom has multiple sclerosis. I'm so impressed with your ability to kind of do it all, etc. Here's my email if you're interested in connecting. Keeping it short, subtle, and really showing that I knew her and valued her for who she was. Well, not 10 minutes later did I click refresh on my email as I was checking on my flight, and there was an email from Meredith Vieira saying, thank you so much and wonderful to connect, and of course you're not disturbing me. Now that connection opened many doors for me. I formed a relationship, and ultimately Meredith wrote the cover blurb for my book that just came out, and that was an incredible experience for me, even though that was years ago. What I learned from that was that I didn't have to network like everyone else. I could network in my own way. Two other quick notes. Sandy Carter in my book talks about how she was a up-and-coming manager at IBM. And she would work her butt off. This is corporate America. She had to keep her head down and get it all done. And she was focused on being the best at her job. She would work through lunch. She would work late. She would work all the time. And one day her manager called her into the office and he said, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to go down to the lunchroom, the cafeteria, and I want you to look at who's sitting there. What do you mean? This made no sense. Okay, she'd try it. She went downstairs and she saw that everyone eating lunch together were all men. Men were taking time out to have lunch to sit and network with one another. And they were getting big deals done. While Sandy was focused on being the best she could be at her job and competent and working really hard, the others were networking and getting ahead. This was a valuable life lesson for Sandy, and she learned from that experience how important networking is. Finally, the last story I want to tell you is about Dina Bykowitz. Dina Bykowitz is somebody who connected with me. I was her celebrity girl crush. Instead of me emailing Meredith, she actually reached out to me. She told me not just why she admired me, but how she could add value to my life. She runs a networking organization called Fireball Network, and she teaches people how to network. She offered this service to my staff in exchange for my meeting with her and forming a relationship and seeing how I could help her grow her business. I thought that was a great idea. I did, and she taught my staff so much. And in turn, I helped get her a lot of new business. One of the things that she taught the staff that I really loved was when you're introing yourself, and you're talking about yourself, you don't just say, hi, I'm Carrie, I'm the CEO of Likeable Media. You don't just say, hi, I'm Susan, I'm an architect. You make it interesting and memorable. Something to the effect of, hi, I'm Susan, and I built that building on 32nd and 5th. Do you know that one? It's shaped like this, really interesting. Something that makes you stand out and memorable. I loved that tip from Dina, and I've held it to this day. Those are just some of the stories from Your Network is Your Net Worth. And to recap some of the lessons. First, we know that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And from my story, you know that nothing ventured is nothing gained. You must try and network even if you fall on your face. Even if Meredith hadn't answered me, I would have known that it was the right thing to do. And being thoughtful and personal and personable both, not only makes you memorable, it also opens doors. Really, the concept of being thoughtful, I think the way I reached out to her, letting her know that I didn't want to disturb her, really helped. Rethinking networking. I love this from Sandy Carter. You have to ditch the perception that networking has to be clunky or awkward. Being thoughtful or personal in your communication makes you memorable and can open doors. Making networking a priority. Pretend networking is in your job description. There's not a job alive where it shouldn't be in your job description. Don't eat lunch at your desk. And networking online is a good thing, but it's not enough. Think of those guys sitting at the lunch table. Finally, making yourself memorable. Make networking asks short and to the point. I wouldn't have paid attention to Dina if her ask wasn't short and she couldn't tell me what she was able to do for me. Think of an interesting way to present yourself in less than 60 seconds. Think about Dina's example of the architect, explaining what they do and how. How can you talk about yourself in a way that's fun? Every job under the sun can be interesting. Just think about how to tell the story of your job quickly. Okay, so the next section is about finding your Fab Pab, which I call Fab Pab. It's your personal advisory board. And I came about this concept because I really felt like the world of the mentorship community is broken. As mentors, I often mentor. People ask me all the time. Quite often, they either don't follow up enough or I have trouble having time for them, and it feels like a lot of pressure, both on me and on the mentee. And I know for me, when I was mentored and still am, it can feel like a lot of pressure. However, I discovered this concept of the Fab Pab when I was becoming a manager for the first time and was sent to a training. We sat down in a conference room and everyone took out their notebooks. And the guy said to us, "Hey, draw a circle on your piece of paper." Okay, drawing a circle on my piece of paper. What do I want to do? He said, the circle on this piece of paper represents a table. Who's sitting at your table? And I said, what do you mean? Am I just drawing like who I'm at dinner with? What exactly do you mean? He said, no, I want you to think of you as a company. And the people sitting around the table are your board of advisors. Your board of advisors who you can go to, not just about your business, about your health, about your life, about your career, all of the things that you deal with in life. Who would you go to? So I drew my table and I drew the people that I thought were there. And what I realized was that I really wasn't using these people enough and that I wasn't necessarily giving back to them as much as I could. Once I recognized that I wasn't using a single mentor strategy and I used a more informal strategy of a personal board of advisors, I found that they added so much more value to my life and I knew to ask the important questions of them. I think other people in our book who really came up with good concepts of how to use a Fab Pab would be someone like Rachel Sklar. Rachel Sklar co-founded an organization called The List. It's an online group for women only, which is by application only and nomination. You are admitted to the group. It's an exclusive group of high-powered women. She started it because she wanted to recreate the concept of an old boys club, but for women. Men have been doing this for years. Now it's our turn. So I thought this was a genius concept. One of the things that I found most fascinating about Rachel was that she said that she expected this to help her career. But ultimately what it also did was when she became a single mother, she needed a lot of advice and help, and the list came through for her in droves. They really were able to help her achieve the kind of not only the work-life balance and helping with how she was going to freelance and run this business and do all of this, but how she was also going to survive as a single mother. These were key learnings that she got from building her, not only her own personal board of advisors, but a business based on her personal board of advisors. It was pretty incredible. The last story I want to tell you on this section is from Morgan Greco, who currently heads up a bunch of different channels of A&E networks. What she did was she really wanted to work within an organization. She wanted to work, I believe it was within Viacom. And she wanted to work within Viacom. She had interned there. She knew she wanted to work there. And when she wanted to get a position, it wasn't necessarily so easy. So what she decided to do was use LinkedIn and cross-reference people who went to her school, her alumni who also worked at Viacom. She sent out about 40 emails. One very important person got back to her, a C-level person who worked in finance. Now, Morgan had no interest in finance. She was totally terrified, but she decided to meet with him, and she decided that she was going to ask a question that was actually unrelated to, will you get me a job here? She said, do you think it's worth it to get an MBA? He had a lot of thoughts, and primarily his first thought was, no, I don't think it's necessary. From her asking that question and having the conversation, it led him to help her get an interview within Viacom and ultimately get her first big gig, which was a huge deal. One of the other things that Morgan talks about that I love is she believes in the concept of paying it forward with a FabPab, right? This person served as a key member of her advisory board. So she offers to do this for people all the time. Many times she speaks at organizations and conferences, and she always offers to have coffee or a conversation with anyone who comes up after she speaks, right? So lots of people come up to you after you speak. They come up to her. They say, oh, I'd love to connect. She says, great. She gives them a card. The number of people who actually follow up is significantly fewer than the people who actually come up to her. It's like maybe 1 out of 20. So the runway is really clear to add to your FabPab. A lot of people always ask me, how do I find people? Think of Morgan's story and think of the fact that you can go up to anyone at any conference anywhere and form a relationship. People are open to networking and they're there to network. And so take advantage of that. So going through just some of the lessons of these stories on finding your FabPab, your network alone won't be enough. You also need a support network. It's not just around careers. You know, there are lots of people who I would ask questions about how to get ahead in my career, but I might not ask like, hey, how much should I have in my savings at age 30? What do you think is the right amount? Like, you don't always ask the same people the same questions. You really need a support network. I want you to stop worrying about finding a formal mentor. If you have one, great, and it works for you, great. But I urge you to look at this different type of method to help you have a more informal relationship with lots of smart people. Focus on forming relationships with multiple people who can serve as advisors. This is rather than just one single mentor. And remember to think beyond just, how can I get to the next step in my career? I would encourage you even to look at advisors who aren't within your field. I have lots and lots of stories about that in the book as well. Follow through and follow up. Ask people who work at your dream company or in your dream industry for informational interviews. You will not believe how willing people are to give informational interviews, especially if you're looking at someone in your alumni network or someone you're remotely connected to. Informational interviews take the pressure off of someone feeling like they need to hire you. They're just giving you information. And that information can be so, so valuable. When someone hands you their business card, follow up. It's a missed opportunity. It's literally someone saying, here, I'm okay to talk to you. Many, many people don't follow up. And the simple act of following up with a short, smart correspondence about how you can add value and what you'd like from them is something that can work wonders. It's simple. Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call when you have a big idea, when your boss tells you you're not getting the promotion, when you have an industry-specific question about a work project, when you're thinking about switching careers? I want you to think about some of these questions. In the book, Work It, I have a bunch of different questions on a little quiz that help you determine who should be in your FabPab. These are just some of them. There are lots of other ones, too, that are pretty fun. But when you think about it specifically, and I'd like you to encourage you to actually take a minute to do this here, think about who you would call if you had a big business idea. Let's say you were working in a business in one industry and you wanted to consider taking a leap to another one. Who would you call? Who would you call if you were feeling really frustrated at a job? Would it be someone within the organization? A lot of times there are people who are at your level. They don't always have to be above you. You go to a work friend and you feel comfortable talking to them because sometimes they see what you don't. Who do you call when you have an industry-specific question about a work project? So this is a good example of not going to someone in your office. If there's somebody outside of the office who makes a lot of sense within your industry. A lot of times, I talk to people who work in agencies that are similar to mine, even though they're technically my competitors. We're all there to help each other. When I find people that I can trust, I'm perfectly comfortable having them on my FabPab. And who do you call when you're thinking about truly switching careers? I want you to think about just some of these and then incorporate some other elements of your life too. Who do you call when you're going through a breakup? Who do you call when you're considering having a child and you're not sure how you're going to balance it all? Think about these things. I encourage you to draw your own table and think about, how often am I in touch with these people? How often am I able to really add value to their lives too, to make sure it's symbiotic? A really important piece of the puzzle that sometimes we miss. Okay, so now let's get real practical, talking about how to get the gig. So I'm going to tell you a story here that's actually pretty cool. I worked in sales for a long time at Radio Disney, and I was a top seller in the country, and I was a great salesperson. Now, let me just tell you one thing. I definitely could have stayed in sales forever and been very happy. But, I felt this tremendous sense of drive. Really, I probably should have talked to my fab pap here, because I think ultimately this wasn't the right move for me. Ended up being fine, and we can talk about that all the time, but when we make mistakes, ended up being fine, but definitely I was a good salesperson. I should have stayed a salesperson and not obsessed about furthering my career to become a sales manager. But that's exactly what I did. I went from Radio Disney, which was a format that I loved, and went over to interview at Cox Media Group for WBLI, which was a pop station. I was really excited. I was interviewing to be the local sales manager. So Cox Radio is really an incredible company. All of Cox Media is, and they do a sales screener test for you in sales and management. So they have this independent screener group call you, and you do this interview that asks you really random questions. So here they ask me things like, what do you do if somebody, do people have a right to their own opinions? And then if they have a right to their opinions, because most people would say yes, are you able to change their opinion? Is it your duty to change their opinion? So I thought I was really cool here. Okay, you guys, I thought it was Oprah, actually Oprah. And I was like, oh my God, you have to go with your bliss. People have a right to their opinions and they should feel them, and you do you, and it's going to be all good. And I was like, oh my God, I totally aced this interview. I was so excited. I got home and I was talking to my husband, Dave, who is also in sales, and he said to me, oh no, you failed that test. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the answer is, yes, people have a right to their opinions, but I must change their opinions to believe what I believe, because that's a sign of great command and leadership. So I had no idea of this. So it turns out that I failed the screener to be a sales manager. I was not cut out to be a sales manager, precisely for the reasons that Dave said. However, when I had gone in for my initial interview, which is when they decide to give you the screener, I had made friends with the receptionist. I had talked to her about her day, like I normally do, just chatting. And I saw from afar this man watching me. And I looked at him, and he had a kind of a puzzled look on his face. And I remembered it in the back of my head. So when my manager-to-be called me and said, listen, you failed the screener, but I'm going to give you the job anyway. And I said, why? She said, I'm only allowed to make one exception in the history of my employment here, and I'm going to make it for you. She said, because my manager saw you talking to the receptionist and giving her, a lot of respect and conversation, and he knew that that was the quality of somebody he wanted in a manager. I think that it's a very important lesson, not just to make friends with the receptionist, but to treat everyone at an organization like they were the CEO. I think to me that was a differentiator in my career. By the way, I went on to be a successful sales manager, but it still wasn't the perfect job for me. But I did go on to succeed enough, and I believe that it was largely because they took a chance on me because I knew how to treat people. Talking about a couple of other things on getting the gig, I talked to Jenna Ushkowitz. You may know her from the hit TV series Glee. She was also on Broadway in the show Waitress and Spring Awakening, a variety of different things. And she talks about actresses and the immense feeling of rejection that they constantly feel. The thing that they need to push for and the thing that you need to do to get the gig is have resilience. She talks about actually her audition for Glee when she auditioned for the role of Tina. Tina had Tourette's syndrome, and she had studied so hard, focused so hard on people with Tourette's syndrome and having the proper stutter and the proper voice, that she actually blew the last line of her performance. It only had a couple lines in the audition, and she totally omitted the last one. She didn't even learn it. Totally blew the interview, totally blew the audition, but kept following up. And it turns out long-term, they ended up loving her and casting her in the role. You must be resilient in order to get the role you want at the place you want. It might not be at the time you want, but if you are resilient, you can push forward. Finally, the story of Lindsay Signor, who is really incredible. She's heads up the marketing for the NBC Olympics team. And one of the things that she was able to do was really learn the benefits of light, polite stalking. Lindsay knew that the position she wanted in the Olympics rotated every year at NBC. It was a year-long position. So she watched when someone got hired and actually put it on her calendar when their time was up. She started about 3 months prior, before the time was up, started networking and getting in to be able to get that position. And because she was watching every move, where every person moved, not just the person who was there for a year, but where their bosses were, really looking at every time someone changed within the organization, Lindsay was able to get into that role and then grow within the company. It was an incredible story, all because she was paying very, very, very close attention to all of the players when they came into a position and when they left. So if we're looking at the lessons from this, I want to talk about this. You want to keep persevering and really pursue your dream. You might want to gut check it with your fab pab to make sure that that dream actually can be a reality. But I think once you do that, if you're sure of something, you got to push to get there. The ability to shake off the no is key to succeeding. If you can't handle rejection, you're not going to be able to push forward to get the job you want, because there's going to be a lot of no's before there's ever a yes. Even if you don't get the job you want, I want you to stay in touch. That was one of Lindsay's tips. And also, there's a woman in the book who doesn't have a specific story, but has a lot of tips because she does a lot of recruiting. And she talks about staying in touch. The first no doesn't mean never. The first no doesn't mean never. Follow up. Factors to success. There's talent, there's timing, right? You have to have some talent. You have to be in the right place at the right time, and you have to have the tenacity. Jenna focused entirely on her tenacity and waited until it was the right time to pounce, both to get in it. She tells stories of when she got into Waitress, when she got into Glee. All of the stories focus on those three key elements. Finally, being a super sleuth, or some light, polite stalking. Engage in a healthy bit of job stalking. If you can create a compelling reason for something, you can create a sense of urgency that will get you there faster. So coming up with a reason. So one of the things that Lindsay did once she took that position that was a year long was she came up with, you guys aren't doing enough with social media and I can help you get there. That compelling sense of urgency, that fear that they weren't doing enough, helped her get to her next role within the org. And she was very successful there. I think that's a very important thing to think about. Nailing the interview, you want to do your research, you want to show confidence, and you want to ask yourself if it's a good fit. Is this a good fit for you? Not just for them, for you. Okay, let's talk about making that money. This is a really important part of my book that I feel very proud of because we need to get more comfortable talking about money. Women don't talk about money enough. I believe if we talked about money, we would be in much, much better shape. In fact, I had no idea how to talk about money in the early stages of my career. I remember I was in my first job. I was probably making about $32,000 a year after I had been there for a couple of years. And I was ready to make the next move. And I got this interview at Polaroid. Now, Polaroid at the time had the top-selling camera in the country, and I was going to work in youth marketing, which I loved. I was going to launch the iZone camera, and it was going to be great. So I had a boss there that I would have been my hiring manager, and then she had a boss. So first I interviewed with my future boss, Jill, and she asked me all these questions, and it went really well, and I was like, I'm dying to work here. And then she slipped me a Post-it note and said, okay, we're going to meet with my manager now. And she said on the Post-it, I opened it on the walk over, and it said, tell them you're making $55,000 a year now, and you will not come for less. Now, By the way, I want to note that in today's day and age, you're not even allowed, as a very recent legislation, you're not allowed to ask people what they made at their last position. However, at this time, that was totally normal. The idea that I had to sit in front of someone and saying, I won't come here for less than $55,000 was terrifying. But because of that Post-it note, not only did I do it, but I totally lost the fear of talking about money with people in positions of power. That was a key learning moment for me. Now, I want to give you two other stories, and one of them is actually my favorite tips in the whole book. I talk about them all the time. But before I give you that one, I'm going to give you another really inspiring one, and that's the story of Nikki Ostrower, who's a nutritionist. Nikki and her husband, Matt, decided to have a family. They wanted to have a child. And at the same time as they got pregnant, Matt got laid off from his job. Now, Nikki was just a nutritionist, focused on a few meetings with key clients, wasn't really focused on building anything huge yet. But necessity is the mother of invention. And Nikki knew that she wanted to wait for Matt to find the right job, get the perfect fit for him. And she also knew that they were about to have a baby and lived in the New York City, and it was not easy to do that. And so she had to get really smart really fast. So Nikki was able to come up with a few things. First, she started doing ALCAT testing, which is food sensitivity testing. She got a nurse, and she was able to outsource that and be able to make a lot of money because it only took a few moments to do the test, but the test was very expensive and very helpful to people. And so she knew that she could help people, charge them the fee that they expected, and to be able to make a good profit on that. The other thing she focused on was corporate retreats and wellness, focusing on companies that could spend more than individuals who were focused on nutrition. Not only did Nikki carry her family through the birth of their beautiful daughter, but they actually built a big sustainable business, and now she has a wellness center in New York City. So I'm really, really proud of Nikki hustling to make ends meet as her husband searched for his dream job. By the way, he did find a great job, and now they are living very happily with their beautiful baby, their beautiful dog, and now their beautiful business. The last story I want to tell you about this section involves somebody who worked for me when she was very young. So when I got to talk to her, I was so impressed listening to what she'd learned over time. This is the story of Carrie Kerpen, who is the director of community at ClassPass. Carrie taught me the best tip ever for how to ask about and talk about money and how to really negotiate on your own behalf. And the way she did that was teach me the concept of the mental mute button. Carrie would go into an interview and say, what is the salary for this position? And then she would force herself to mentally put herself on mute. When she has any kind of discussion, how am I performing in this role? Mental mute. When do you see me being able to grow into the next position at the company? Mental mute. She really decided that by owning this awkwardness and putting it onto someone else, she's just silent. So all of the awkward part of the conversation goes to the other person. It was a key tactic for her in negotiating and a key tactic for her in learning how people really feel. People will really tell you how they feel if you let them. If you lose the nervousness and the desire to talk over people, you will realize that they're going to tell you exactly how they feel. You just have to use your mental mute button. So let's talk about some tips. So discipline around money is key in business and in life. And that story actually comes from my own, not only discipline about asking for raises and this kind of stuff, but my own story. There's a great story in the book around this about when I had just started the business only like a year in. We were growing really quickly. And, when you grow really quickly, it's very dependent on cash. We didn't do any fundraising or anything like that. We started the business with $10,000 in the bank. And as we were growing, I had to loan our company my last $10,000 to be able to make payroll. It wasn't that we were in a bad situation financially. It was just that we were growing too fast for our own good. I had decided right then and there that I needed to make sure that we learned about how to run the ins and outs of a business and finances. As I mentioned, I think women are often very uncomfortable talking about money, and especially women in business. One of the reasons that we don't go into business for ourselves is we don't always want to take risk. And for me, I found that what helped me mitigate the risk was gaining a lot of knowledge about financial terms, about understanding how to do my own books, and things like taking out a credit line, which we ultimately did and helped us grow our business. We probably would have been out of business if we didn't do that. Take risks in your career, but not with your investments. See, this is an interesting story that I didn't even yet tell you. This story is from Jill Schlesinger, who is a money analyst for CBS, and she does a great podcast, Fabulous Woman. She talks about how she always took risks in her career, but she never took risks with her money, which I thought was so interesting because she's a financial advisor. But she said she always plays it safe with her money, and she takes risks with her career because she'll always bet on herself. She doesn't feel as comfortable betting on the market, but if you take risks in your career and it doesn't work, you're falling back on yourself. You are in control of your career. You're not necessarily in control of the market. So I think that's an important thing for women and a great tip from her. And the best bet you can make on, like Jill says, is on yourself. Okay, let's talk money. So you got to know your number that you want to get hired at a job. You want to get practice by having money conversations with friends. This is a great place for your Fab Pab to come in. I want you to try and have an awkward conversation. Like, talk to your friend about how much they make. How often do you talk with your friends about how much they make? Because my guess is never. People, especially women, we'll talk about sex all day and night. We don't talk about how much we make. Imagine if we all knew. Imagine we would know far quicker that we were earning less than men. We would definitely know what different people make in different industries versus going to like salary.com and trying to figure it out. Those numbers always feel wrong. And so having these actual conversations really help you. When you're starting a business, get educated about cash flow and how to manage it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't hire someone else to do it right away. Learn how to do it yourself first. That's one of the best pieces of advice I could ever give young women who are starting businesses. And finally, find a money mentor. Look for somebody who you can talk to about money, who can serve on your Fab Pab. I know for me that was really essential. I needed to be able to have honest conversations about money, and I still find it kind of awkward sometimes. But when I had somebody that I knew I could talk to about money, I felt a lot less afraid. Talk about how to hustle to make ends meet. Talking about Nikki's story, necessity is the mother of invention, so don't be afraid. Just push forward and do it. What can you do today to bring in more money? That's what Nikki thought about. That's how she came up with the ALCAT test and corporate wellness. She had to. And what unique value can you provide that others can't? When you can find something unique, you can charge a true commodity for it. And I think that that's something that helps you make money in a way that others can't. How to ask for a raise, practice uncomfortable conversations with managers, embrace the awkward, have frequent conversations with your boss about your career and money goals, and go for it. To bring us home, we're going to talk about how to stand out in social media. This is a specialty for me. The thing I want you to do, this is the big one. I'm not even going to share any stories here for you. I'm going to share an exercise for you and some tips. The reality is employers, people you meet, people you exchange business cards with, they're Googling you right now. And not only are they Googling you, but they are looking at you on social media. True, you can hide things across social media, but ultimately, I want you to be able to use social media to your advantage and show what you want people to see. I'd like you to try the total stranger test. I want you to ask a friend of a friend, somebody you don't know, through your friend or through a coworker, to take a look at your social profiles. I'd like you to ask them 3 words that describe you based on not knowing you, just looking at your social profiles and what they find from searching you on the internet. I then want you separately to list 3 words you wish you were known as, if somebody was identifying you. Are you a leader? Are you a mom? Are you an entrepreneur? What are the words you want? Are you warm? Are you smart? The words that you want people to see. Then I want you to compare the 3 words that the total stranger gave you and the 3 words that you have and see how it works. That's called the total stranger test, and it's detailed in my book, Work It. Looking at ways to stand out on social media, create a presence that helps people feel like they know you. Focus on the platforms that work for you. You guys, if you're not into Snapchat, don't do it. But if you are, do it. It's really about where your audience is and where you feel most comfortable. And own your online brand. If you don't control it, you are leaving it open and vulnerable. Put the social in social media. Think how you might reach out to someone you've always wanted to talk to. social media is a leveling ground. You can reach just about anybody through social media if you have a good ask and a compelling reason to do so. Turn an online connection into a connection in real life. Again, keep it short, keep it simple, keep it smart, and make sure to give as much as you get. So here we are with the book. I think Kim's going to hop back in, but I do want to tell you the book contains all of these stories and more, lots of tips, lots of exercises. Hopefully this packs a good punch for you, and I'm so excited to answer any questions you have. And please, if you like the stuff, order it today. Work It, Secrets for Success from the Boldest Women in Business.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. That was a marathon session, but that was unbelievable. Thank you so much, Carrie.
I did it for you, Kim. I got it right on time.
Yes. So her book is Work It, Secrets for Success from the Boldest Women in Business. And the webinar presentation today was based on part 1 of the book. So you'll get all these tips, all the stories written out beautifully, and plus 2 more sections. So if you enjoyed today's webinar, I really encourage you to read Carrie's book because it's wonderful. And now we're going to get to the questions. We've had a bunch rolling in. And if you have more questions, tweet us at #AskBankable or ask us in the Q&A module. And while you're asking your questions, I wanted to announce that everyone who registered for today's webinar is eligible for a free trial issue of Forbes magazine. All the advice that Carrie shared today will definitely help you in your career, but Forbes also offers tons of other stories and insights to help you on that path as well. Simply go to www.forbesmagazine.com/bankable and fill out the form. All right, so we have a bunch of questions rolling in. Let's jump in. Let's see. Andrew asks, what is one thing you recommend doing each day to ensure career success?
I recommend 2 things every day. And these are kind of a little more hooey. First, I recommend the night before setting a plan for the day. It doesn't, and an intention for the day. It doesn't even, I plan out like what I'm going to eat and when, where am I going to exercise, what do I want to accomplish at the company today, what's one thing that's really important that I need to accomplish today. So for me, it's setting an intention for sure, and focusing on the big things. I think it's key. And then I also think for me, what makes me more successful is channeling gratitude. When I think about gratitude and being grateful for the people around me, it actually makes me much, much better at my job and just in a better mood and better able to handle the stress of high pressure.
I also love making lists in the morning. It really helps me. I call it a brain dump, and in night before bed, I always have all these thoughts spinning around in my head about what I have to do the next day, and I can't sleep unless I just write it all down, and then I kind of feel empty afterwards and relaxed. So I love that tip. We have another question. How do you handle a team and motivate them to work towards a specific goal? Now, I know you and your husband started your own company. How do you get your teams to just kind of focus in on what's important?
So we used something called the one-page strategic plan, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. It's by Vern Harnish. I think we published our goals at the company. We put them up everywhere. And I think that what I really do to get the team to move forward is a very strong focus on core values. I don't care if you have 3 people or 300 people at your organization. You need core values that talk about who you are. And if you need everyone to get towards goals and work together, then you need to look at things like teamwork or, a push, a drive to succeed, any of these things being part of your core values. I think that when you hire for certain core values, then automatically they're pushing towards the goal. So it's 2 things. It's focus on core values and then following a strategic plan where goals are publicly posted.
Awesome. Oh my goodness, we're getting so many good questions. I don't even know which ones to pick.
I will answer tons after the webinar.
Oh, thank you. So everyone tweet at Carrie after the webinar.
Yes,
She'll keep
Carrie Kerpen.
Wonderful. So let's see. What's the first step to success if you're an introvert and you have difficulties interacting with people face to face? Now, you definitely covered this a bit in your presentation and even more in depth in your book. And I love the story about how you have to use your if someone gives you a business card, you have to follow up, because I'm guilty of that. I'll get someone's business card. I'll be brave enough to go up to them after a conference or something. I'll get their business card, and then I'll just kind of hold on to it and chicken out on emailing them.
Yep. I think that there's never been a better time for introverts in the world than right now. Because we are having fewer and fewer face-to-face conversations. I want you to learn how to have a face-to-face conversation. I want you to get comfortable doing that. But in the meantime, social media was built for introverts. Email is built for introverts. And I think ultimately one of the tips that I have for myself, and in watching many members of my family and circle, did you ever see like how great introverts can be on text? Sometimes you can meet somebody in person and they can be like kind of, right? They can be feel kind of cold or kind of like it's not really a connection. And then on text, they're so warm. It's because they're uncomfortable in person. If you can form and again, you have to get someone to agree to this, but if you can form a texting relationship, like by just saying, hey, are you a texter? I'll totally text you. Like, what's your preferred method of communication? Almost nobody now is making the time to talk on the phone. That's why I think it's a great way to cut through the clutter. However, if you're an introvert, you can own that. Make your method of communication really unique, whether you're texting and using Bitmojis or you are emailing but having a very specific style of email. You can overcome it by working around it. There's also a really great book by Maura Ahrens Mele about specifically working as an introvert. It's called Hiding in the Bathroom, and it just came out. It's really, really great. It just came out a couple months ago. Really great book. So that gives even more, even though there's a lot in the book for that. But I would say own the fact that you don't want to meet in person. Just be okay with email. I want to save your time. Make it about saving time. It would be great.
Great advice. Here's another question. How can I effectively approach people or make connections at my dream company? What, for you, for instance, is your favorite method of communication? If someone wants to reach out to you, do you prefer Twitter message, Instagram? What's your go-to?
I am very responsive. So whatever you reach out to me on, I will reach out in some way. And if you, for instance, let's say you wanted to get into Likeable and you emailed me and said, I'd love to talk to you for an informational interview. I might not have time for the informational interview right now, but I would make sure that you get in with somebody at my company who would be great for that. And then I might, say, okay, I can meet with you X number of months down the road, or, when the book tour is done or whatever, looking at that. I think that the best way to reach out is really, like Dina says, to be memorable. I love people who send me handwritten notes. I think on LinkedIn, if it's not a spam type of email and it's like, listen, we went to the same school, showing the commonality. I went to Emerson. Somebody emails me and says, I went to Emerson, and I'd love to get ahead, and I'm trying to figure it out. Do you have time for a quick call? What works for you? Make it easy for the other person. That's what I would say. It's just however you do it, try and make it easy as possible. And show that you know them. Show that it's personalized. And that's how you cut through.
I love that. Kelly is asking, what are your tips to build up resilience to rejection?
Yeah. Try doing things that are way outside of your comfort zone. Okay. Try reaching out, and you have to do things that are no. See, here's a good example. I never played sports as a kid. And the reason I never played sports was that I was terrified to lose or not be good at something. I wish I played sports as a kid because I needed to learn how to lose. I needed to learn how to get a no, like, no, you can't be, first in the batting lineup or play first base. Like, no, you should be in right field. And you are going to have to learn and work your way up. I think ultimately you have to put yourself in positions where no is possible. And once you do it, it's sort of like owning the awkward, like Kara talks about with the money. Mm-hmm. You have to own the fact that you'll get rejected. Like, give yourself a treat every time you're rejected. Every single time you're rejected, give yourself a yay, I got rejected treat. Like, go find a reward that you like and do it, because we have to, because at least you swung. You know what I mean? Like, as a kid, I never got up to bat. Like, I want us to be happy that we swung. For us as women, we're so focused on being competent and the best at our jobs, we're not focused enough on being confident and putting ourselves out there. Reshma Saujani from the book talks about how we teach our boys to be brave and we teach our girls that they have to be perfect. That's why we are not comfortable with rejection or failure because we feel like we need to be perfect. Men don't care. They just go and do it. They shake it off and move on.
So true. Kind of along those lines, what's the best way to bounce back and market yourself after you've been laid off or maybe out of the workforce for a while? This question's from Robin.
It's a great question, Robin. So first of all, I would do lots and lots of informational interviews with many different people, and I would also join a bunch of online networking groups. One of the stories in the book that I love is by Anya Hoffman. She tells a story of when she got laid off, she decided she wanted to be a freelance writer, and how she was going to go freelance for a while. And yet she had no idea about the business of freelance or how to get back in or do anything like this. And so it was recommended to her that she join a bunch of online groups. There are several online groups for freelancers, groups on Facebook, etc. She joined them. She spent lots of time talking to lots of different people, and that networking helped her get back in. It's not like she went out saying, hey, I want a job. It was more like, hey, how do I do this? What do you recommend? Do you know anyone? And I think doing that really helps you get ahead. It's lots and lots of conversations. And you can't go into every conversation expecting that you'll get a job out of it, but expect out of every conversation that you'll learn something from it. And that will help you a lot.
Ashley is asking, what's the best next step to take to follow up after completing an online job application? I think a lot of us, when you apply for a job, you get your resume, your cover letter, you fill out all those questions, you submit it, and then it kind of feels like you're sending it into a black hole. Do you have any advice for following up?
Yeah, actually, this advice isn't from me, but it's from Brianna Folds, who's the director of talent at Cornerstone On Demand. She gives a whole list of these in the book. And one of the things she talks about is how this guy, I think, sent a Mountain Dew bottle on a surfboard or something. They sent things afterwards that were memorable, and she never ever forgot them. So like sending something in the mail that might be interesting, making a short video about how passionate you are. We had people snap other people. You send Snapchats to our HR person. We've had a lot of really cool video things for people who want to get jobs. I think you have to go above and beyond. Imagine you're in a sea of online applications. So what can you do to cut through the clutter? What's the worst thing that happens? You're too over-aggressive and you get rejected. You probably wouldn't have been called anyway. So I think ultimately you've got to swing.
I love that. Let's see. Some more questions here. What's your take on starting your own business versus working in corporate? And what do you think is the importance of an MBA?
This is a great question. It's a really personal question.
Right.
For me, I've worked on both sides. To be an entrepreneur, you have to have a tolerance for risk. You have to have a stomach of steel. Yet I will tell you that there is nothing more freeing than having freedom of your own time. To own your time, to not report to anyone, to have your ability to create whatever you want is really incredible. That being said, I don't think I would have been anywhere near as good of an entrepreneur if I hadn't worked in corporate. Because I think that getting some experience working for other people is essential. Because especially when you're going to manage other people, you need to know how you like to be managed, how you like to interact. So I think it's always good to get some real life experience. And this is just my personal philosophy. I mean, different people would answer different things. For me, I think it's very important to get real work experience first. And then if you're willing to take the risk and you have a good idea, there's nothing more freeing or beautiful than entrepreneurship if you can handle it. There's a story in the book, by the way, from Eliza Licht, who was the VP of PR at DKNY, and she was DKNY PR girl on social media. She was like famous for a long time.
Yes,
then she started her own
consulting.
Yes, love her. She wrote a great book, and she actually became an entrepreneur, launched a consulting firm, and ended up hating it, and went back into corporate. She went back to work for Alice and Olivia. So she realized that entrepreneurship wasn't for her, but she needed to try it to know that. So sometimes, especially when you're young and you don't have a lot of stuff weighing you down yet, it's always good to try it.
Let's pivot the conversation a little bit to money. Let's talk some money. Allison is asking, when the conversation of money is so sensitive right now, especially with women, what would your advice be for finding out the levels of which roles you are going after, salary-wise? So I guess she's asking, the range of salaries can vary so much by role. How do you know what to ask for? Where do you do your research?
So there are lots of different places to do research, but I think ultimately for me, I'll give you my advice and then I'll give you the advice that Kara talks about in the book. My advice is to talk to other women and say, are you comfortable sharing your salary? Because chances are they'll feel a little uncomfortable at first, not in the job interview. This is like women you know in your field. Right. So, talk about what we're making and like, can we have real conversations about this? Because I believe that there's no better time to do that than right now when we're uncovering, these huge discrepancies in pay for between men and women, and we're looking at, really the conversation of women and money is very big right now. And so I would consider talking to friends about this. And then also what Kara does is Kara doesn't just look at the role salary levels for her role. She looks at the role above. And the reason that she does that is it helps really give her the range of where she's going to want to be in the future and for planning. She looks not just at her own level on some of these salary comparisons. I find that these things sometimes are way out of whack, honestly. Yeah. I mean, when I look at them for Likable to do salary comparisons. And sometimes I find that they're way higher. Sometimes I find they're way lower. It really depends. And so I think the only way to really do it is to have conversations with your, fab pab, with people around you about money. It's hard to do.
Yeah, I actually just wanted to bring this up. I have a friend who is looking for a new job, and I told him about hitting the mental mute button from your book. I had just read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to share this great piece of advice with you. And he tried it, and he's still in the process of negotiating the job offer, but it really helped him. He hit the mental mute button when he was getting the offer, and it really helped him. So that is if you take away anything from this webinar, that honestly works.
I have to tell you, I interviewed a lot of people for this book. I interviewed, very, very high level people. And it's so interesting that the tip that not only that I use most, but give to people the most is that exact tip, because I think it's so important, especially for women who tend to get nervous and talk. It's much better to keep it at a lower, use your mental mute.
Absolutely. So I have a question for you actually. Who is in your Fab Pab, and how many people should we expect to have in our group?
It's usually about 5 to 7 people. Okay. I have a lot of people that could be in my Fab Pab, but if I were really narrowing them down to who I would write in that at the exercise, Candy Harris was my mentor and then came to work for me and now serves on the board of directors at Likeable. She's somebody who was first a client. She's worked with me in every capacity. She's been a client, then she's worked for me, then we worked together on the board, and she's taught me so much about myself. And, she was really hard on me as a client, actually, and I learned so much from that. My husband would be on my Fab Pab for sure. Bev Thorne would be my money person. She is the Chief Marketing Officer of Freedom Mortgage, and she's featured in the book. She tells me all the time about, why aren't I investing in property yet, and what do I need to think about, and, very, very open discussions about money and what I need, where I need to go in my life. And then also there are people who have built and sold large agencies. So that's very relevant to me in what I'm doing in my own career. And then there are authors, who really motivate and inspire me, women from the list. It's hard to, I kind of put the list in one seat at the table because they rotate, but people like Nilofer Merchant are people who would sit at my table.
So I think we have time for one more question, and I'm going to ask you, what's the one action item we should take to move forward in our careers? If we could do one thing today, tomorrow, what would you recommend we all do?
I would recommend that you value your confidence as much as competence. Don't focus on being the absolute best at your job. Focus just as much, or not to focus on being good at your job. You should focus on being good at your job, but it's not the sole thing. It is equally as important to learn how to talk about yourself and how to talk about what you do in a way that is powerful and strong and not obnoxious. Learn how to talk about yourself in a way that channels your strength and helps you get to the next level in your career.
Well, that is a wonderful note to leave on. Thank you so much. And Carrie, everyone should go out and get your book. It's called Work It, Secrets for Success from the Boldest Women in Business. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Can't wait to see you guys. Connect with me on any social media that you'd like.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.